friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're going to be in the kitchen making green chicken enchiladas, and we're going to be in the sewing room making a flag quilt block. So if you're interested in making either of these two things, stick around. In our garden right now, we have a lot of spinach, we have a lot of onions, and so I thought this would be a perfect time to make some green chicken enchiladas. So I'm substituting some turkey for chicken because we had roasted a turkey a couple of weeks ago and had frozen some smaller packages of it from the leftovers. And so I've got that thawed out and shredded right here. And I'm going to first chop up some of our onions, and these are onions from our garden, and this one right here is already starting to get pretty good sized. And I'm going to be using the greens as well as the bulb. So I'm just taking the roots off and the tips off, and I'm just going to be cutting this up. And since that's pretty thick there, I'll go ahead and split that like that. So just in small pieces. And just keep your fingers out of the way. And some of this will be for the garnish too. So we'll have toppings on top of the enchiladas as well. So let's see. I think I can cut it all the way like that. We've got lots of onions this year. They're looking really good. Hopefully they will have a good year. You never know year to year what's going to do well and what might be a flop. So what we do is we grow what we can and preserve what we can, and if the next year we do not have a good crop in something, hopefully we preserve enough to help us get through the next year. Canned goods will last several years as long as the seals are in good shape. Frozen foods, if you keep it really cold and they aren't allowed to defrost and you have them sealed correctly with no air, they can last a long time as well. So we've got lots of onions chopped up there. And let's go ahead and grab some spinach, and this is just pulled out of the garden and I rinsed it off, so I'm taking off the stems. So I think I'm gonna have to do another batch of spinach balls. If you saw the video that I did earlier where I froze spinach into balls, I think I have enough. We're going to have another big harvest here, and I think I'll be doing that real soon. And then it's going to get too hot and it will die. But you know, we have both lettuce and spinach, and we tend to eat the spinach in place of the lettuce a lot of times because we really like the spinach. Okay, so you just want to chop this into bite-size pieces. So I'm gonna chop it across so it's just kind of in squares. And I am not measuring. If I pack that down, that's probably a little more than 2 cups. This right here, again, because it's the greens and there's lots of air and stuff in there, if I pack this down, that's probably a cup or so. Again, part of it will go into the enchiladas and part of it will be sprinkled on top. So let's take a bigger bowl here and let's put our turkey or our chicken, either one, into the bowl. And I just shredded this just so you can have nice pieces to eat. And let's just add our ingredients. So I'm going to add our spinach. And I am going to add most of the onions. I'll keep a few out right here for the top. Okay. I'm also going to add, and you don't have to add this, but we have it in the freezer. We have peppers. And these were frozen peppers, and these are just sweet bell peppers. So I'm just going to add those because they'll taste great in this. But if you don't have any, you don't need to add it. I am also going to add some of our cilantro. I had just a little bit left in the freezer that I had thawed out. It's still a little icy, but it's pretty much thawed. And I'm going to add that. We should, I hope, have cilantro this year because we really do enjoy it, and I like to put it in my salsas. So let me grab this fork here, and we're just going to give this stuff a little mix. Well, you could just eat this as a salad, couldn't you? Now to this, we are going to add some shredded cheese. And I think this is Colby Jack. And about 2 cups. I'm going to save. This whole bag was about 2 cups, but I'm going to save about 1/4 of a cup to sprinkle on top, and I have some other cheese too that I can sprinkle on top as well. And you can add more. If you like it cheesier, you can add more. In fact, I think I am, because I've got quite a bit of vegetables in there, and I've got a little more meat than usual. So I'll just sprinkle the top with some extra cheese. So I put 2 cups in here. Again, this can be by your taste. If you don't like something that I've added, don't put it in yours. Then we have about 1 cup of sour cream. And that's just going to help make them nice and creamy. And we're just going to get all of this mixed together. Now, if you wanted to add other vegetables like olives, or sometimes we will add broccoli. If it's fresh broccoli, I will cook it real quickly, kind of like a blanch, just to get it a little bit cooked before we put it in. If I use frozen, I just usually let it thaw out a little bit and then add it. But make sure you get all of that sour cream. Sometimes it kind of hides in a little ball in there. And this melts down and cooks down. That spinach will cook down to hardly anything, and it will have some water in it, and it will help moisten this up when it cooks. Corn would be great, fresh corn. Any kind of peppers. If you like spicy hot, you can add any kind of peppers. In fact, I have some of our ground pepper, and I'm going to add a little bit of green jalapeno. This was just dried and then ground up last year. And it doesn't take much of this, so we've got pretty much a lifetime supply. And I think I'm going to add about 1/2 teaspoon. Now that would vary depending on what you like, but this is dried and I keep it in the freezer so it stays fresh. That's really concentrated. Then I'm also going to add some chili pie pepper that's also ground up, dried chili pie. And chili pie is a sweet and with a little bit of a kick pepper. And this one, I think I'll add about, that's probably a teaspoon of that. I'm also going to add some taco seasoning, and you usually don't see this in the chicken enchiladas, but we like the flavor. So I add it, and I'll add a nice big tablespoon of it. You don't have to add that. And then I like some garlic powder. So I will sprinkle about a teaspoon of garlic in there too, just to give it lots of flavor. And then we'll go ahead and mix again. Now, if you see that yours is too dry, you could always add more sour cream, and that would be good. This is going to be just fine. Like I said, once it heats up, this will shrink down and it will be just right. Get all of that incorporated. You could also add some black beans to this if you wanted to add some beans to your enchiladas. You know, just make it like you like. Traditional enchiladas, chicken enchiladas don't have that, but if you like it, put it in there. Okay, I think I got everything mixed up pretty good. I don't see any pockets of sour cream. And now we are ready, squeeze that out, to put it into our pans. So let me clear this out and I'll bring you right back. Okay, that's a little nicer and cleaner. So what I'm using, I make enchilada sauce and I make salsa verde, but I use our green tomatoes. Usually at the end of the growing season, we have a whole bunch of green tomatoes that I hate to see go to waste. So I make salsa verde and enchilada sauce with them. And there's also some green tomato relish and things like that too. But I'm getting low. I didn't make any last year just because we didn't need any, but I think I'll be making some this year. So at the end of the garden season, when we're harvesting the last of the green tomatoes, I will probably do a video on this. So I'm going to go ahead. I have an enchilada sauce and a salsa verde. I may have some more somewhere. I just grabbed these two. These were the two I found. And they're very similar, but they have a different recipe, and I cannot remember the difference, but there is a difference, and there is a difference in taste. I think the enchilada sauce is a smoother sauce, and the salsa verde is a little chunkier. So what I'm going to do, you could use either one for this. I'm just going to use a little bit of both and just kind of mix them together. So I'm going to put some salsa verde in there and some green enchilada sauce. And I'm putting this in two smaller dishes. This will fit in a big casserole dish, but we're going to freeze one and then we're going to keep one to eat. Whenever I cook things like this, I always make it so that we have something to put in the freezer, because especially this time of year, it gets so busy out in the garden and doing yard work and things that it's nice to come in and not have to cook anything. Just stick something in the oven and we're good. So, okay, so I just put a nice layer at the bottom of my pans, and then I am just going to take, and again, I'll give it a little stir here. Now you could add salt and pepper if you want. The cheese and the turkey had plenty of salt, so I think I'm just going to hold off. We can always salt it when we eat it. So I just put, you know, it depends on your tortillas. Now you can use certainly corn tortillas. That would be great. I just have flour tortillas here, so that's what I'm using. And so that's probably between a fourth and a half, probably about a third cup. And you can make them as thick and full as you want. And then I just lay them in our pan. So I am going to, and these are just the medium ones, not the burrito size, but I guess, is it the enchilada size? The taco ones are a little smaller. And I just make sure I have filling all the way throughout. And remember, like I said, that spinach will shrink down a lot. and you'll hardly notice it in there. It smells really good. So I am just going to finish filling all of these, and when I get it done, I will bring you back. All right, so I filled up both of our pans. This one right here we're going to have for dinner tonight because I think it will fit. I think I'm going to put this in the air fryer because I've got something else I'm going to be putting in the oven. So I'll put this in the air fryer, and then this one I will go ahead and bake and get it cooked through, and then after it's cooled I'll wrap it and freeze it. So I had just a little bit left, and I could have gone in and pulled out some and stuffed them a little fuller, but I think what I'm going to do is I am just going to put a little bit on the top and call it good. Just like that. Then I'm going to take both my enchilada sauce and my salsa verde, and I am going to evenly spread them on both of them. So I think what I'll do is I'll just go down the middle with the salsa verde like this. And you don't have to use it all, but we've got it, we might as well use it. You could save some for dip for your chips, but that's okay. So we've got that going down the middle. Then I'm going to have this, which is the enchilada sauce, on the rest. And just divide it between them so that you can get most of the flour tortillas or the corn tortillas covered, whichever you're using. Okay. It doesn't look too pretty right now, does it? But that's okay. It's gonna taste good. Okay, so what we're gonna do is stick it in the oven. Then, about 10 or 15 minutes before I pull it out, I'm going to cover it with cheese. And I'll cover both of them with cheese. And also I will top them with the or the onions at that time. And that way the cheese won't get too brown, and it will still be nice and smooth, and then the onions will still have a good flavor. So I will bring you back when we pull these out of the oven. And I'm bringing you back because I just realized we need to put the aluminum foil over them to bake them. I always have the foil over them for most of the time. I usually take it off about 5 or 10 minutes before I put the cheese on. That way it has a little bit of time to get a little bit of a crispy edge around the outside of the enchiladas. So now these are ready to go into the oven. And there it is right out of the oven, and I'm going to let it cool just a little bit before I put it on a plate, and then I'll show a picture at the end what it looks like. Today we're going to be making this sawtooth flag block, and it's called a sawtooth flag block because of this block right here. This is a sawtooth star block. And so it is a simple block to make, and it's a fun one to make. It is an 8-inch finished block. If you add a border up here and down here, which is only a 1/2-inch finished border on both sides, and we'll talk a little bit about your options there here in a minute. But there's a QR code that will take you to my YouTube channel, and if you want this download right here, you'll need to go to your description box below, and it'll say free PDF or sawtooth flag block, free pattern. Go and click on that and it will open up. If you notice it's not opening up, you probably don't have a reader for a PDF, and that would be like Adobe, which is a free add-on to any of your devices. Also, I store these in Google Drive, so if you have Google Drive on your device, it's probably going to pick it up. So let's open it up. Oh, and before we do that, also I have these letter tiles, and I designed those to go along with any patriotic quilting you're making right now, just for fun. It is also a free download at the bottom. It's a heart flag, and it's got the letters on it, and these are used to identify your cuts, to keep all of your pattern straight. Whenever I make a pattern, I always label my cuts right here, and so these are fun to use, and they make things a lot easier. So if you're interested in this, just download it below as well. Also, if you put it on paper, just use it, throw it away. If you put it on cardstock, it will last longer. If you laminate it, they last basically forever. I've had several laminated letter tiles that I've had for years and years. So if you're interested in that, that is below. So that will be fun to use. So I do have all of my cuts right here, and I do have all of them labeled. So in your pattern, we have the cuts. Now, I don't have the directions because this is not a full pattern. It is just the cuts. If you watch the video, I will show you exactly how to make this. And you have all your cuts here, how many you need, the size, and the letter. I've got it broken down into stripes, the white stripe, the red stripe, star points, which are the star points right here, and they're white in my picture. The star background, which is the blue, and the flag background, which is this and this. So that is all the cuts. You get to choose if you want to make it scrappy. You can use all different kinds of fabrics. I just used 3 or 4. Well, I think I used different colors for the star points. I just had some various light pieces, and I thought that would be cute to use, because none of these pieces are very big, and it would be really easy to use your scraps. So let's get started. I have followed this, and I have cut these out according to these directions. So let's see what we're going to do first. Let's just look at the picture. Well, let's look down here. We'll use this as our guide. This right here. So the first thing we can do is we can sew together our strips. So we need C, A, C, A, and these are C and A. And so what we're going to be doing is I'm going to sew these two together, these two strips together, and you really want to be careful that you know, if you're new to sewing, pin on both ends, because you want them to line up perfectly. I did not give any extra fabric for trimming. If you want to, you can cut them a little bigger and then trim them. That would be fine. That would be longer. Just cut them longer and then trim them. But it's just a short distance, so I don't think you'll have any trouble. So I'm going to sew 1/4 inch away from this seam, and I'll do the same with this one. Put these together, so 1/4 inch away, and then I will come back and I will put all of these together by sewing, and you'll need to be careful and sew alternate colors, and sew these two right here together. Okay, so we'll have a strip of 4. I'll bring you back when I've got mine sewn together. And here we have our 4 strips together. Again, make sure that you have alternating colors. You should start at red and end at white, or start at white and end with red. So there should be opposite colors there. All right, so we set this aside. The next thing, let's do these 3 strips right here, a D, a B, and a D. So here is my D and my D and my B. Now I did starch my fabric before I cut it, and it helps to help with better control of your stitches. But you don't have to. This block isn't real small, so it doesn't make as much difference. I do definitely like to starch when I'm doing smaller blocks. And so when I do this one, this is pretty small, and so I did make sure I starched those pieces. So it's up to you if you want to starch or not, but it does make it easier. So with these 3 pieces, I am just going to do the same thing. I am going to alternate red, white, and red. And I'm going to sew these 2 together and then sew these 2 together. And remember, a 1/4 inch seam. And there I have those 3 sewn together. Now when I press these, I press toward the dark. You can alt press all in one direction. You can open your seams and press it like that, whichever way you'd like. We are going to have some seams matching when we sew it to the star. Just these 2 right here. Well, actually these 3. So it's up to you how you press them, but mine lays flat fine when I press them different ways. It does make it easier to nest on this one if one's going one way and one's going the other. So you can decide. I kind of think I'm going to probably press those open anyway. A lot of these little pieces I think I'll press open. So now we're ready for the star. So let's just set this aside and let's work on the star. So in order to do the star, we are going to need to make some half square triangles, and that is going to use F and E. F is the star background, the blue. E is the star points, the white. Let's set these up here. And in order to make half square triangles, very simple, we are just going to put these together, right sides together, just like this. If you have a seam guide for 1/4 inch seams on your the base of your sewing machine, you can just use that. I will draw the line since most people don't have one, or newbies don't have one. And I'm just going from one corner to the other, making sure I am right on those corners. And I'm using a friction pin, and these will erase with heat. This will be in your seam line, so it doesn't matter what you use. I would not use a thick marker or something that would bleed into your fabrics. Whoops, that one didn't go all the way across. And then once I have all of my lines drawn, what I'm going to do is I'm going to the sewing machine and I'm going to lay all my pieces up like this. Now, if you're new to sewing, I'd put a pin on both sides. That way your blocks will stay together and won't become skewed. We are going to trim down a little bit, but not very much. So you do need to be pretty exact on this. And I just noticed my line right there is not a good line. So I will correct it. If I get to the sewing machine and I notice there's something wrong, I correct then. So what I'm going to do is start right here. I'm going to go 1/4 inch away from this line, continue all the way down. Then I'm going to pick up my presser foot and I'm going to turn this strip around like this. And I'm going to go on this side 1/4 inch away from the end. And when I've got mine done, I'll bring you back. And there is my strip. And I just need to separate them. And then what we're going to do is you can either use your rotary cutter or a pair of scissors and just cut directly on that line. Now I am using a Minnick and Simpson variety of fabrics. They have some really pretty fabrics that are patriotic. I know that they've retired last year and there won't be any more lines coming out, and so that's really sad. But I do have a tub, or a small tub, of Minnick and Simpson fabric that is all red, white, and blue, and I plan on using that for a lot of my patriotic placemats, quilts, lap throws, whatever. I do like their fabric. It's such pretty colors. Now what we have is a half square triangle. When you open it up, there is a half square triangle. Now, it is not the exact size. It needs to measure 1.5 inches, and it is very, very close. But we've got a little bit we can shave off just so that we can make sure these are really accurate half square triangles. So there are a couple of different ways to do this. One way is just using a ruler that's 1.5 inches, laying it on there and trimming it around. But most of us don't have a 1.5 inch ruler. The other is we can lay this down and use a larger ruler than our half square triangle. And I'm going to go ahead and press this seam open so it lays flat. Okay, so once it's nice and flat, we are going to take a ruler that's larger, and I'm going to use this one right here. And it has the 1 and the 1 here, and then there's a diagonal line that is a 45-degree angle line going right there, and that will be perfect because I can line my ruler up on that line going across the seam, just like that. And what we see is 1.5 and 1.5, and there's just a little bit on these two sides. So I want to trim up all the edges, so I'm going to scoot it just a little bit so it's a hair of a piece of fabric overlapping over here and over here, and that way I can also overlap, or I can also trim off these sides. And if it goes above that 1.5 inch line, you'll know that you can't trim off anything. It's got to be at that line or below it. So let me just get my rotary cutter here, scoot that over, and make sure it's all lined up. And there's one. And then we're going to flip it with that corner that we just matched up on the opposite corner. And again, we are going to line up that diagonal line on the seam. And this time we're going to use that 1.5 inch line on this ruler and make sure the edge of the fabric is on those lines. And it is, and we'll just take that off. So as you can see, I don't have much extra fabric. If you want to make your squares a little bigger, you can. We're going to trim them down. So if you wanted to make the cuts for this, like 2¼ inches, you'll have more to trim down, and that would be fine. It's all up to what your preference is, but this is fine for me. Okay, now if you want, you can also use the half square triangle paper, and there are free paper or downloads available for 1.5 inch square finished half square triangles, and I will, if I can remember, I'll try to add the link at the bottom. Also, you know, you can purchase the half square triangle paper at your local quilt stores or online. So another way, and this is what I use this ruler right here, and it is Quilt in a Day 6.5 inch triangle square up ruler. And if you've watched my videos, this is the one I always use. There is one that's bigger now that also goes a little bit larger. I like this one. I usually don't have to make half square triangles and trim them up with a ruler like this if they're much bigger. It's always the smaller ones that I'm doing because it doesn't have to be as exact as you get bigger with your triangles. So this one has where it's 1.5 inches, 2.5 inches, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, and it goes up to 6.5. Over here we have the 1 through 6, but then you have all the different lines, so you can go up to 1/8 or down to 1/8 of an inch. So any size half square triangle from 0 to 6.5 inches is on here. And I like that. And the nice thing about this is you can do this before you press, so that you can press afterwards, and you only have to make 2 cuts. So since this has to be 1.5 inches, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find 1.5 right here. And you might notice that I have some grippy tape on the back, and that's just to hold my fabric in place for these small cuts, and I just stuck that on there. So it's not normally there, but it's there to help me. So here's my 1.5 inch line, and it's this red line going across like that. So I need to make sure that line, I think I'll do it on this side because I can see the line, the seam line. The seam line right here, I think you can see better there. The seam line right here needs to go on the 1.5 inch line all the way across. So you just layer that 1.5 inch line on your ruler right on top of that seam line. And I can see I don't have a whole lot of extra fabric at all on this one. So I am just going to take off whatever is there. And again, just a small amount, okay? But then when you open it up, here is your half square triangle, and you can press it whichever way you want. Again, I think that since this is going to be a small block, I am going to press it open like this. Now, if I want to get rid of these dog ears, and here's why they're called dog ears. Looks like little dog ears. If I want to get rid of those, I like to do that right after I trim it. Here's my seam right here, and without going across my seam, don't cut your seam, I just trim in, and that way they disappear. You can also trim them off afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of my triangles just like this, and then I'm going to press open. So I will bring you back when I've got that finished. So here are all of my finished half square triangles. And remember, these measure 1.5 inches right now, but they will be 1 inch finished. So if you need to get paper to make them, the half square triangle paper, you need the 1 inch finished. So let's set this right here. And here's just my scraps that I had left. So this can either be saved for stuffing into pin cushions, or you can throw it away. All right, now let's lay out our block. Now I have cut, just to show you 2 different ways you could change this star. I have cut 2 H's. One H it's this one right here. It's the center of the star. One is a light color, the background color or the star point color. The other is the blue that's for the star. And I'll just show you what either one looks like. I opted for the blue, and that's why I have this 2.5 square H in the star background blue. But if you like to have a full white star, you can have that too. Real easy by just swapping out one of your fabrics. So let's get started putting this together. H is the center, so let's put it together like it was supposed to be put together first. G's are the corner, or the corners. And we can just put those in here. Now remember, these are going to have seam allowance in here, so these are not going to look right at first. Now we need to make sure that our blue, you have to watch this carefully, a lot of people get these turned around. We need to make sure our blue go together and that they're making a triangle that's pointing to the center. So we'll do that all the way around. And I'm going to try to mix up my background colors or my white colors here so that I don't have the same ones touching. Whoops, and see, look what I did. You start getting off, it's going to look like a different block. Whoops, that one goes there. This one, whoops. This one goes there. We'll just put this one here. These two are the same, so I'm going to switch these two out. I'll put this one over here. Yep, that's the way. Okay, and then take a look at it, making sure all of your triangles here are pointing in. Okay, there we have our block. And so that's what it looks like with a center that's the blue. If you want to use the star point color, that's what it looks like with the star point color. It's just a solid star. So you can go either way. I'm going to go ahead and do the blue like I wrote the pattern. And so now what we need to do is we need to sew this together just like a patchwork quilt or patchwork block. We're just going to sew these two together. And I'm going to sew these two together. Then I'm going to sew, I'll open them up and sew these two together, and we'll have this whole strip sewn together. I'll do the same for this one. Now on these, I'm going to sew these two together like this, 1/4 inch away. These two together like this, 1/4 inch away. When I open them up and press them, I'll then sew this whole piece right here, and this whole piece right here. So when you open it up, you're going to have one long section, one long row sewed together. So then we'll have 3 rows sewn together. So I'm going to sew all 3 rows together, and I'll bring you back. And I did just want to bring you back real quickly before I sewed these together to show you in case it didn't make sense what I was telling you earlier. These two right here we sewed together, so now that they will fit with this center one, we will stitch these two together 1/4 inch away from the edge, and these two together 1/4 inch away from the edge. And if you are looking for perfect points, which I never am, but just for those of you who do strive to have those perfect points, this is where you would just be careful not to cut off your point when you're sewing your 1/4 inch. If the distance between here and here is less than 1/4 inch, there's a good chance that you're going to cut off that point. You might need to just, when you're sewing along, scoot over to the side just a little bit. So when you're going along, just go 1/4 inch. And then when you get to this point here, you might just back up a little bit and then keep going 1/4 inch away. And that will help with that. But again, I'm never the person that is looking and making sure I have perfect points, because these things are going to be used and loved in my home, and no one in my home really notices that. So I'm going to sew these two together, and then I'll bring you right back. All right, so there we have that piece right there. Now, and oh, I wanted to tell you also, I have pressed open all of my seams. That way it'll lay pretty flat, but you can do whatever you feel comfortable with. So now we've got to sew these together, and this is where we have to meet the seams. And since I've pressed open, they're not going to nest. So I just need to make sure that my seam lines are on top of each other. And when they are, I'll just put a pin as close as I can to that seam line. And I'll go right over here. And as you see, I have a little bit extra fabric here on my center square, and so I may have cut it a little bit bigger, or it could be that my seams were just a little bit larger than 1/4 inch, but I think it's probably the cutting, or it could be shrinking of fabric when I was pressing. Any of those things will do it. So what I'm going to do when I put this on my sewing machine, I'm going to put this down on the feed dogs, and I'm just going to kind of stretch it a little bit and just go down like that, and that should take care of it. Then once this one is done, I'll do the same with this piece, and then I'll bring you back. And there is our sawtooth star. I think that looks so cute. If you need to trim anything off a little bit, you just don't want to trim off your points, because if you do, you're going to lose your points when you sew your next seam. So this block would be a cute pin cushion. So it's the same size that we were making for our pin cushions. So if you just want to make this into a pin cushion, that would be really cute. I'm kind of thinking that it may be cute to do the flag as a pin cushion. I could reduce it down to a 4-inch, go from an 8-inch to a 4-inch. That should be no problem. But instead of doing a tiny 2-inch sawtooth star, I think I would just use a 2-inch piece of fabric there that was blue, and then that would be really cute. You could even do a blue fabric that has stars on it, you know, that would be cute. So if you look at this, it looks like, oh, you've made a mistake. You have this big hangover. Nope, we're going to put a 1/4-inch seam right here on both sides, so that'll take a 1/2 inch in. We're going to fold this over, and we are going to match seams here. So we are going to match this seam right here, and one of them's open and one of them is to the left. And so I'm going to match all 3 of these seams, and that will just make it look really nice. And again, if you have any loose or extra fabric on one side, that loose fabric will go toward your feed dogs. And so I do have just a little bit right here. And so I will put this down. I'll be right back. And there we have that piece right there. And I just pressed open again. Now we just need to put these 2 together, and the nice thing is there's no seams to match. You just want to match the edges. Make sure that you don't end up pulling it to one side, and then you'll have to shorten your block. So we'll just put these 2 together, and I will just put a pin at the end just to make sure that I don't let it slip. And I'm going to put this side up this time, and that way I can keep track of all these seams and make sure I don't flip my seams, because there's nothing on the back there. All right, so there is the flag. Now at this point, it should be measuring 8.5 by 7.5, I believe. Yes, it's 8.5 by 7.5. But if you want to make it square, you can go ahead and add, it's a 1-inch strip here, but it ends up being a 1/2 inch finished, and a 1-inch strip here, which becomes 1/2 inch finished. But I'm not going to do that at this point, because I'll probably be putting this into a block, some kind of a table topper, a pillow, a quilt, something like that. And when I know what my background color is, that is when I will be putting my strips on the side. And so what I'll probably do, instead of having a real thin strip here and a real thin strip here, I will probably just make this piece up here and this sashing here a little bit bigger. Now, if I were doing different blocks and all the other blocks were 8-inch square, I would probably need to go ahead and put in my 1/2 inch piece of fabric or 1-inch piece of fabric here. And then when I have my sashing for all of my blocks, that would be fine. But I'm going to stop right here with this one until I know what I'm doing with it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and don't forget your cutting directions and your letter pieces are in the description box below. I will also be linking up to the video for the pin cushion in case you want to go back and turn this block into a pin cushion. Also, if you were noticing this design board, I have another video in which I do this design board, and it is how to sew a design board, and I'll put a link for this one in the description box below too. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. Also, don't forget to like and share, and I hope you have a great week. Bye-bye.